So hello, everyone. Welcome to PDINA Royally Teachable Moments. There's been a lot of discussion about the Markle versus Markle case, and people are saying that Samantha lost and that Meghan won. And in my video yesterday, I was giving you some information about how did she really win, looking at what it really meant with this, and she didn't necessarily lose. So we're going to talk about the complexities of what that meant so that she can actually amend what was ruled on, because she has 14 days now to amend that. And we're going to talk to Frank George about that. Frank is our civil litigator. He is going to be talking to us about the Markle versus Markle case. So hello, Frank George. Welcome to PDINA Royally Teachable Moments.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then we'll get into the issues at hand.
Yeah, sure. So I am a litigator. I'm an attorney. I'm located in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm with the firm McCarthy Lebit. I primarily practice in the area of employment law, but I dabble in all forms of civil litigation. And the Markle v. Markle case really does present questions about civil litigation and some questions about legal procedure. And I think it presents an interesting topic for us to have a discussion about today.
And so let's talk a little bit about that. We know just most recently, there was a decision made on the case. If you could go through exactly what happened and, what the possibilities are moving forward, because a lot of people have this idea or conception that Samantha lost the whole case and that it's done, it's over. So if you could what happened.
Sure. I will do my best to kind of walk through this, and I'll also try to keep it engaging and interesting for your viewers.
Yeah.
What happened was something called a motion to dismiss was filed in the Markle v. Markle matter. And a motion to dismiss is something that's filed very early on in the lawsuit, basically very shortly after the plaintiff commences the lawsuit by filing a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
So it happens, generally speaking, before parties conduct discovery, before they exchange documents, before they take depositions.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for a complaint to be viable, it has to make allegations that, if they are true, would actually entitle the plaintiff to legal relief. And if a plaintiff's complaint doesn't do that, the defendant can move to dismiss that complaint. So when a judge is looking at a motion to dismiss, the judge is not looking at outside evidence, not looking at documentation or witness testimony. The judge is only looking at what we call the four corners of the complaint, what's actually in the complaint. And sometimes the judge looks at documents that the plaintiff chose to attach to the complaint. And so basically, this judge, when you're looking at a motion to dismiss, a judge assumes that all of the plaintiff's allegations are true and basically asks, okay, even if we assume that everything the plaintiff is complaining about is true, is the plaintiff actually entitled to legal relief? Is the plaintiff actually complaining about a recognizable violation of the law?
Mm-hmm.
So if I could give kind of a simple example, if I were to file a lawsuit because I were to say, let's say I filed a lawsuit because you, Dina, greeted me the other day with a handshake. I might be able to prove that actually happened and that that's true. But the thing I'm complaining about, someone greeting me with a handshake, that's not a violation of the law that would permit me to obtain legal relief.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we were looking at in a motion to dismiss. So in the Markle v. Markle case, the judge looked at Samantha Markle's complaint and basically asked, let's assume everything Samantha alleges is true. Do these allegations, do they actually amount to unlawful defamation? do the allegations actually entitle Samantha to legal relief?
Okay, can I just say something really quickly?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I got a little example in my head when you were saying that. So it's kind of like if Samantha said, my sister Meghan, she hurt my feelings. She said something that was so mean. I'm so upset, like pouty, like almost. And then Meghan is like, the judge is saying whether or not my complaining about my sister being mean and nasty to me, if that is really something in the law that says you get to have relief for this, not looking at what the law says. We got to determine if it's like viable, like what you were saying. So
you got it exactly spot on.
Okay, great. That's a good way of looking at it.
So I think the next thing we've got to look at then is, what does it mean to defame somebody? Because that is what Samantha Markle sued Meghan Markle for. She claimed that she was defamed. So defamation, you have to prove 5 things.
There's 5. I thought there were 4. There's 5?
5 things to prove defamation.
All 5 you have to prove.
You have to prove. And your complaint has to allege facts sufficient to prove those 5 elements of a claim of defamation.
Okay.
So the first thing you have to show is that the defendant, the person who you're suing, actually published or distributed information about you, the plaintiff.
Okay.
Second, you have to prove that that information was false. Third, you have to show that the plaintiff acted with some level of fault. Sometimes that can be negligence. Sometimes it can be recklessness. Fourth, the plaintiff has to show that they suffered damages. And finally, the statement actually has to be defamatory in nature, meaning it's the kind of statement that could expose the plaintiff to ridicule, contempt, hatred, harm to their reputation.
Got you.
So there's a few things that are just never defamatory. For example, a statement that's just expressing an opinion, that's not defamatory. Okay. Also, a statement is only defamatory if it provides a statement of fact that is not true. Okay. So again, I think that this is an area where an example might be helpful.
Okay.
I can go on television and I could say, I think Pepsi makes the worst soda. I hate Pepsi. I think it's way worse than Coca-Cola. And Pepsi can't sue me for defamation because I'm just telling you my opinion, right? Mm-hmm. Now, on the other hand, if I were to go around telling people that PDINA is a bank robber, and that's not true, then I've said something that's a statement of fact that's false, that damaged your reputation. At that point, then you might have a claim against me for defamation. So there's a distinction there.
Okay.
When we look at what Samantha alleged in her complaint, it really, I think it's, the judge broke it down into 2 parts, and I think this is a good way of looking at it. Some of her allegations related to statements in a book called Finding Freedom, and the other part related to statements that Meghan made during a CBS interview with Oprah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the allegations about the book Finding Freedom, there's a big problem there. And the problem is that Meghan Markle did not write or publish that book. Mm-hmm. So again, even if we assume everything that Samantha alleged was true, the issue here is that Samantha's claim had to be dismissed because she can't prove the first element of a defamation claim. In other words, she can't show that Meghan was the one publishing and distributing that information.
Okay. Can I ask you a question though?
Yeah, sure.
So she didn't publish or write the book, but what if the authors could only write that information because they got it from Meghan? There's things that only Meghan would have known that they wrote.
Yeah, and you know what? There may have been a better way to plead that. I don't know. I will tell you that the judge looked at case law and concluded that kind of contribution of information as a source to somebody who then went and published that information, that the person serving as the source generally isn't isn't liable. Now, I haven't gone and looked at the case law that the judge was citing.
Okay.
So I can't really speak to uh, uh, the whole universe of the case law on that specific question. I think it's a good question, but I will tell you that part of Samantha's complaint was dismissed, and Samantha doesn't get a second chance at alleging that claim. She
Okay.
doesn't. She doesn't get to refile that part of the complaint.
Okay, so when you say that part of the claim, she can never talk again about my sister hurt my feelings because of what she said or what was said in the book Finding Freedom. Just that part can never be brought up again.
Right, and I want to talk a little bit about the distinction between when a judge rules on a motion to dismiss, the judge can either say it's dismissed with prejudice or it's dismissed without prejudice.
Okay, but before you go into that, can I ask you another question? Okay.
Yes.
So what was dismissed was only the part about the Finding Freedom book. Is that correct?
So the whole thing was dismissed.
The whole lawsuit.
The whole lawsuit. So every claim was dismissed, but it's the portion about finding freedom that was dismissed with prejudice.
With prejudice. Okay, so go ahead.
Prejudice. The rest of the allegations were dismissed without prejudice.
Okay.
So when something is dismissed with prejudice, you don't get a second shot at it. You don't get to amend and refile. But when something is dismissed without prejudice, then you get an opportunity to amend your complaint, refile, and try to fix the problems that the judge identified in the motion. In the ruling on the motion to dismiss.
Okay.
So far?
Yes. And this is the other thing I was thinking. So basically, with prejudice, you get an F and you can't ever retake it. But when you get without prejudice, they're like, okay, here's some cheat notes. Go back, fix what you got wrong on the test, and come back and retake the test.
I think that's a good way of putting it.
Okay.
And I want to talk now about the allegations that were dismissed without prejudice.
Okay.
Because truthfully, I think Samantha's going to have a very hard time refiling and amending in a way that fixes the problem. The other parts of Samantha's complaint related to Meghan's interview with Oprah, right? And Samantha attached a transcript of that interview to the complaint and specifically made allegations that Meghan made a handful of comments about Samantha. So, for example, in the interview, Meghan said she grew up as an only child and that it had been more than a decade since she last saw Samantha. In the interview, Meghan also said that Samantha changed her last name to Markle only when Meghan started dating Harry. The problem with this part of Samantha's complaint is that those statements just don't strike a reasonable person as defamatory in nature. The judge explained that these statements don't suggest that Samantha does not exist or that she's not related to Meghan. These statements instead look more like Meghan just expressing an opinion about her childhood and her relationship with her half-sister. So the thing is, you could disagree with what Meghan said. You could think that she said something mean and hurtful in the interview. But you pointed out earlier, there is a distinction between something that's hurtful and something that's unlawful. And the judge basically said the allegations in this complaint reflect that, Meghan made these comments in an interview, but they just don't meet the legal definition of defamation. So like I said, that part of the complaint was dismissed without prejudice. So Samantha could get a second chance at trying to amend that part of the complaint and refile. And I told you, I think that she's going to have difficulty doing that because this is a situation where, truthfully, the facts are the facts. The interview is the interview transcript, and Samantha has already incorporated the transcript of that interview into her first complaint. If Meghan had said something during that interview that the judge believed amounted to defamation, I think the judge would not have thrown this case out in the first place, because there would have been something in that transcript that you could point to and say that meets the legal definition of defamation. So I think that that's where Samantha is going to have a hard time realleging or refiling this complaint in such a way as to uh, uh, address the judge's concerns.
Okay, but another thing I want to say. So going to the 5 things that would say you have a case for defamation or you have to prove all 5. When people were taunting Samantha about her not being Meghan's sister, or she had harm caused to her because of what Meghan said during the Oprah interview, I mean, would that play into it as well for the judge?
Well, and here's what I would say. There's a chance that she might be able to meet a handful of those 5 elements, right? So I think that she can show that information was distributed about her during that interview. She could maybe even show that that Meghan wasn't particularly careful when talking. She can maybe show that she suffered damages. I mean, if folks really did reach out to her, and I think that she alleged that she received like threatening letters from folks after Meghan made those comments. But the problem is, I think that she's going to have a hard time demonstrating that false information was distributed and that information was actually defamatory in nature and not simply an expression of an opinion or just opinionated negative comments. I think that she's going to have a problem actually demonstrating that this was defamatory in nature.
Okay, for Oprah, but what about what she said on Netflix?
I did not. The research that I've conducted did not touch anything about Netflix. So, there is the opinion that the judge drafted on the motion to dismiss talked about the book, talked about the Oprah interview. There were no allegations that were discussed, as far as I could see, about any statements made on Netflix about Samantha.
Okay, so when she amends, can she then come back and talk about what Meghan said during Netflix?
So if Meghan said something that was defamatory in a Netflix documentary, which I will be perfectly candid with you, I have not seen the documentary.
Well, it's 6 hours long, and I don't blame you, because I know a lot of people are like, look, I'm not watching 6 hours of that. Yeah.
But if she said something defamatory,
mm-hmm.
if that happened in a short enough period of time ago, so like if I have to assume that there's no other procedural defects, because if too much time has elapsed and she said that, then you could run into issues with deadlines and statutes of limitations. But assuming that Samantha is still within her time to file, assuming that there was a truly defamatory comment made in a Netflix documentary, and assuming that also caused Samantha to sustain damages, then I don't see why Samantha couldn't make an issue out of that, because it's an altogether separate or new allegation.
Yeah.
So
she said, I didn't even know her. I don't even know her birthday. I don't know her middle name. Something she said about, I don't even know that woman. But I don't know if you know, because this is international law, there was a lawsuit with the newspapers where Information and Discovery came out, and they had shown emails that Meghan Markle had written to her private secretary, who we know gave information to the book of the Finding Freedom authors. And in the emails that came out that Meghan wrote, she said very defamatory things about her sister Samantha, saying things that were just mean and nasty and that were not true, that came out in this court case over in the UK. Could that information be used as evidence?
So if Samantha is going to refile, she's gonna have to amend her allegations and put in additional facts that demonstrate that Meghan made statements that, like I said, were truly of a defamatory nature, that were false, that had a negative impact on Samantha, I think that is the way that she could refile and avoid another motion to dismiss and another unfavorable ruling on a motion to dismiss.
Okay.
So the fact that the judge dismissed part of the allegations without prejudice means that there is still at least some legal risk for Meghan. This issue is not altogether gone away with. It's still kind of out there, and Samantha's lawyer has expressed an intent to refile an amended complaint. I will note, though, that I think the judge is very skeptical of Samantha's complaint, and I think the judge is skeptical that even an amended complaint will be viable. And the reason I say that is there's an interesting little footnote that the judge dropped in her opinion, where she reminds Samantha, the plaintiff, that your complaint has to be something other than frivolous. It's got to state facts that look like they're meritorious, and if they don't, the court is within its rights to sanction a plaintiff. If you file a frivolous lawsuit, you could be subjected to sanctions, which means that you have to pay a fine to the court, or it could mean that you have to pay the other side's attorney's fees. And I think that so just as there's some risk for Meghan here, because this issue is not completely dissolved or gotten rid of, there's some risk for Samantha too if she refiles, because if the judge decides that a refiling ends up being frivolous or it doesn't address the concerns pointed out in the opinion, then the judge has already put Samantha on notice that could be sanctionable.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Wow. I got it.
It is very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, because I know she suffered damages. She's had so many threats to her life from people thinking that Meghan is telling all these things about her sister, and then people go after the sister, Samantha, because of what Meghan has said. I mean, why would people be so mean and treat Samantha this way unless they're protecting Meghan or they're acting on Meghan's behalf because of what she said? I mean, it's just crazy hate for Samantha.
And I can't speak to, why people behave the way they behave.
Right.
And, I could just take a look at the facts of the case, what the judge decided, and kind of give an explanation as to why I think the judge made the decision that the judge made. Mm-hmm. But, unfortunately, people can be mean, people can be nasty, people can be...
Yeah.
And sometimes there's a gap in the law. So there's a, you can sometimes sustain damages, but if the law doesn't recognize a cause of action that addresses those damages, then sometimes the aggrieved person or the injured person doesn't have the ability to seek redress through the legal process. That sometimes happens.
Yeah, but isn't the law kind of interpreted sometimes? Sometimes things are just not black and white. You look at all the things Meghan has done against her sister with Meghan's platform of millions of people. I mean, her platform and marrying into the most famous family in the world, saying very negative, even if they're opinions or, whatever. It's like the attacking of her sister in a book, a documentary, an interview with Oprah, and emails that came out in Discovery. All this negativity with your platform, there's can a judge look and think outside the box about how wrong it is to do, her responsibility to just doing the right thing and not calling out somebody like that?
I would say that it is Samantha and Samantha's legal team and her lawyer that need to look at these facts and say, how do these facts fit neatly into a potential cause of action.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where have statements been made that were truly untruthful, that were not just opinions, that did real damage? You know, has Meghan made those comments on a Netflix documentary? Has she made them in other interviews and other public appearances?
Yeah.
Can we demonstrate that those things actually caused her to sustain damages? And you've got to allege the facts so that they fit into the elements of a legal claim. And I think what we saw was that complaint that the judge reviewed failed to do that. Now, the fact that parts of that complaint were dismissed without prejudice suggests to me that there's at least a possibility that the complaint will get refiled and will thereafter survive a motion to dismiss. And once a complaint survives a motion to dismiss, then you're off to the races with respect to conducting discovery. You know, you can ask for documents, subject folks to interrogatory questions, subject folks to depositions, collect all of that information, and really have an opportunity to prove your case on the merits. But you know,
Okay.
it just, we have to wait and see exactly what happens next year.
So when you said deposition, so that means Meghan could still be deposed, and Harry and all these other people can be deposed if the judge allows it to go forward with this amended complaint within 14
If Samantha refiles an amended complaint, and if that amended complaint survives another motion to dismiss, then absolutely, I think Meghan would be subjected to a deposition. I would be very surprised if Samantha's lawyer didn't depose Meghan eventually. But you know, there's a lot of ifs there, and so we're just observers. We'll have to kind of follow the story and see what shakes out, see what happens. We'll have to see if an amended complaint addresses the judge's concerns that she noted in her opinion.
Mm-hmm. So if Samantha does file this and the judge is persuaded by what they file to see the possibility of this actually being legitimate, that's where it lies, in how well Samantha's attorneys persuade this judge. Give us a chance, judge, give us a chance. Like, that's what needs to happen right now, right?
Yeah, well, if that's what needs to happen, if Samantha's going to obtain legal order, right?
Yeah. Okay. So it comes down to how well the attorneys lays this out.
Well, sure. And the truth is, I mean, I don't want to ever lay full blame or responsibility on an attorney, because the truth is an attorney can only work with the facts at his or her disposal, right? So, an attorney can try to present the evidence, or not the evidence, rather the allegations, in a way that more cleanly fits the elements of defamation. Okay. They can try their best to reallege these facts in a way that satisfies the judge. But, ultimately, like I said, the facts are the facts. And if they can't point to, they can't make a meritorious allegation that Meghan has made statements that amount to defamation, then that's not, I wouldn't lay blame on the attorney for that. That's just simply, that's the result of the facts demand, or the allegations demand.
Yeah, I see your point with that. It's just, like I said, sometimes things are just not black and white with the law.
Oh, that's certainly true. And and if this case does get refiled, if it survives another motion to dismiss, if they conduct discovery, that's why we hold trials. That's why we have juries make decisions, because sometimes outcomes aren't clear, and we need a fact finder to render a decision to resolve a dispute.
Okay, so that's what would happen if the judge says, okay, you've convinced me that I believe you've had harm done to you. We're going to move forward. then they can depose people to gather more information to make their case stronger.
That's
And
right.
then who will rule on that? Will that be a judge or will they go to trial?
It kind of depends, right? Because a motion to dismiss, like I said, happens very early on in a case. Once you conduct discovery, the defendant gets another opportunity to try to knock out a case again before trial, by filing what's called a motion for summary judgment. And that's different than a motion to dismiss. Basically, a motion for summary judgment, the judge is allowed to look at external facts and documents and evidence. And the plaintiff has to demonstrate in response to a motion for summary judgment that we have collected enough facts, evidence, documents during the discovery process to demonstrate that there's a question of fact here. It's not clear. It's not clear that there is no cause of action here. Instead, there's a question of fact that there might be a viable cause of action here. There may be liability. And if they create that question of fact, then you move on to a full trial where all of the case's evidence is put out there, and a fact finder makes a decision as to whether this constitutes defamation or doesn't. I suspect that Samantha made a jury demand, so I suspect that this would be a jury rendering a decision, but honestly, I'd have to look at that. It's not something that I specifically looked at in preparation for my discussion with you today. So I suspect that would be a jury. Sometimes trials are tried to a bench or, to a judge as opposed to a jury.
Okay. Can she appeal if she loses the amendment or the?
Yes. Yes.
So if she does not win with this next try with this amendment, she can appeal that?
Yes.
And then
Yes.
bring back in Finding Freedom?
Oh, yeah, she can. So when the district court reaches a decision and it's a final decision, meaning it's disposed of all the issues one way or another, whether it's whether it's disposed of the issues because all of them have been dismissed now with prejudice, or it's because we've gone all the way through trial and a decision's been rendered. Once the district court has rendered a decision as to everything before the district court, then generally speaking, what can happen is you can file a notice of appeal and the circuit court can review that decision.
Oh, and then they can review everything again.
Yes. Now, you review everything again. You don't necessarily start over though, because typically what the court is reviewing is not typically new evidence. It's not typically new documents. It's saying, did the court get this decision right? So given the complaint that the district court looked at, did they make a correct decision on the motion to dismiss? So they're not going to look at a altogether new complaint. They're going to look at the same complaint.
They're going to see if the teacher did her job. Right. It's like, no, you didn't know what you were talking about when you graded her papers. We're going to re-look at her paper and decide whether or not she should get an A because you gave her an F, something like that. Okay.
Yeah, it's a good comparison. Yes.
Okay. But yeah, she can't come back in and say, okay, I got some more information you got to consider. She can't do that.
No, yeah. It's like you said, it's like if you submit a paper to your teacher, the teacher gives you an F, and I'm sure as many students wish there were an appeal system, but if you could appeal to the principal you don't get a chance to resubmit your paper to the principal. Principal looks at the same paper and says, did the teacher get it right? Did you deserve an F or do you deserve a passing score?
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's okay. So yeah, we got to make sure we do it right the first time. And hopefully the person looking at it can see that they did a good job or a bad job and decide again on it. I mean, you just have to wait and see, right? Like you were saying, it's very tricky. It's very tricky, this law, because I can see it like, yeah, that's wrong. What that girl did is wrong. But the judges and the courts look at it completely like with the law. And I just.
Yeah, and there's a lot of conduct that that we might think of as unfair, but not necessarily unlawful.
But not unlawful. We're looking at the
Right.
law, the law,
Right.
the dang law, the law of things of the world. Okay. Okay, well, I think you've given me some really good things to think about. I am so happy to have spoken to you about this. It's a lot clearer.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, thank you. So if anyone wants to, get in touch, or, is there anything else you want to say, or your handles to follow you? Because maybe you could talk about this as it comes out in the news. Maybe you can give your opinion on social media as information is released.
I probably need to have more of a social media presence than I do, but I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. My name is Frank George on LinkedIn. You could find me at my firm's website. It's McCarthy Lebit Crystal Liffman. We're in Cleveland, Ohio. Like I said, I practice civil litigation. And thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Okay. Now, if something else comes out, what can we call you and get your opinion about what has happened next?
Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation. It'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, Frank, thank you so much for meeting with me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Okay.
Congrats again, by the way, on the 100,000 subscribers.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I just get so much love. I thank you very much. Thank you. Bye, Frank. Bye-bye.